Welcome to Polishing Marbles. I'm Audrey, and on today's podcast, I'm bringing you some viewer questions for an Ask Osho event. In this channeling session, I ask Osho about portals, how certain people are chosen during this era, why people have such a difficult time believing in aliens, and lastly, what's the deal with soul contracts anyway? You won't believe what Osho had to say about that last one. I'm so happy you're joining me today for this transmission of wisdom from Osho. I would also like to remind you that no matter what I share with you, be sure to run these messages through your own heart before adopting them as yours. You are your own guru. Look to your heart for your own truth, as love will always illuminate your path. Hello, hello. How is everybody today? I'm so happy to have you here. I just returned from my trip to Maui, and it's taken me a few days to reacclimate myself to the mainland, as they would say, because that whole time travel back is just, it's brutal on my delicate body. Yeah, my physical body had a really hard time with it, had a very hard time. I was all puffy and no sleep, and it was a time. So I haven't really had a chance to do a lot of individual integration. For those of you that follow me on social media, you may have seen my recent post about basically a synopsis of my grid work in Maui, which I can go into more detail later on another podcast, which I'm starting to like piece together for next week. But I thought instead of like waiting for me to integrate all of that information, that it may be of interest for me to do a podcast that's more thematically an Ask Osho event, let's say, because there's so much for me to organize in my head, and today is the 29th, which is the solar eclipse in Aries, and that's kind of a big deal for me with my chart, and so I'm just kind of buzzing. And I've done so much stuff around my house today because that Aries has gone out of retrograde and I am just so full force. I'm not actually sure, is it out of retrograde? But the solstice is definitely making it feel potent to me. Like the things are getting done. You know, the pile of things that sometimes you get accumulated of I don't know what to do with that or that or that. And then there's a pile of I don't know what to do with that. If you're ADHD, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that pile of those things were things related to my dad's death and like like folders from the funeral home and his death certificate and like his memorial little handout for the funeral and just like to know what to do with those things or the sympathy cards and just not knowing like mental freeze every time I look at it. And so that's starting to like be taken care of. So thank you, Aries. Thank you for coming back and giving me some the ability to face things that are difficult emotionally and being able to do them. That's nice. Although I will say there was a lot difficult to do in Maui as well. So I just like stare difficult things in the face. That's what I'm here to do. Um, but what I'm thinking about for next time, actually, when I do talk more about the grid work, is just like a teaser so that you know what's coming up, is about missions that Spirit gives you, missions. Because my trip to Maui, unbeknownst to me, was going to be my last grid work trip in at least this mission that I have had for almost 2 years. And I don't believe it means I'm done with grid work. I believe it means I'm done with that mission. But until the next one's revealed, it means there's no more grid work in my forefront, which is like kind of shocking. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to like astrally send like do grid work in potent areas around the planet that are needing my support. Like I'm always going to be that person. but in terms of like an actual mission. And if I haven't been clear about that mission in the past, people close to me know about it. And in general, it's been kind of dabbled around, but it's certainly not been something I've stated aggressively to for people to just know, is that it's been around healing the divine masculine wound. And I think now that I'm like hearing some astrologers around, I'm hearing this theme come up where the divine masculine is needing to take lead now, like to rise, because the feminine has done the work and we're sitting here and we're exhausted from the work we've done and we're needing help. And so it's time for the masculine to rise. And I believe that my work is done because it's time for the masculine to rise and assist us now. I feel like at least I know there's so many other grid workers that have been doing this work in different frameworks maybe. But I know a lot of people are working toward the divine feminine and implanting rose codes. And frankly, I've been doing so many of that along with the masculine to give it balance, to bring in the feminine with the masculine and to soften and heal the masculine and allow that emotion to come in and feel like it's free flowing so that it's not being held and stuck inside, which is part of that wound with the divine masculine. So that for me, that journey is over, and I really do want to provide a really detailed synopsis of that, which requires more editing capacity I have mentally right now to go back and to kind of do a review, like a short review of what I've done over the last 2 years, but then in addition to that, be like, hey, now when your mission's done, what do you do next? And also, how do you know you've been called for a mission? One of my close friends, I don't think he knew that I was doing this particular mission, but he was in town for Tree Fort in Idaho, this big musical festival and a bunch of other stuff. He's DJ, always has been from rave days. But I was telling him, I sent him a video of my grid work in Maui. He used to live there, and we were talking about the whales and stuff, and he's like, "How do you know you're done with the grid work?" And yeah, that's a really freaking great question. So I was like, I just know. And he knows me well enough to be like, cool. Instead of being like, but how do you know? Just people don't tend to keep asking me questions once I say something kind of cryptic. But I would like to dig into that deeper and really reflect retroactively, like how I got the call, how I knew I got the call, and how you might know you're getting a call. And how do you answer that call? And how do you know the call's complete? And what do you do then? And maybe I'll have a better answer by next week. I don't know. But the thing is, I've had my hand in so many different pies since my awakening journey started, and grid work is one of them. And if that pie is taken away, I have, still lots of pies. Um, so this is a time to kind of recalibrate. And in that recalibration, I have to say, oh my gosh, it was so interesting because I had scheduled a group channeling session, like locally, like right after I got back. And at least I had 24 hours to sleep and recover-ish. And I was like kind of worried, am I gonna be able to bring it when I do get this reading? And I love doing in-person events so much because I get to see, like, I can always feel the spirit of someone through Zoom or whatever. If I'm going, like, talking to someone in another country, I can always feel that. That's always present. But to be able to do it in person is just another special joy. And these women were extraordinarily precious. I just wanted to squeeze the crap out of them as soon as I met them and went to their house. Um, But the power and the potency of the gift I have to channel is something that gosh, it's interesting as I'm talking about callings. My calling was to be a counselor for like the majority of my adult life, and I didn't realize for most of that time that I was a counselor that I was channeling. Like I was legit channeling what people needed to hear when they needed to hear it. And because of that, I was really successful as a counselor because I was always full. No one could get into me after I was, as soon as I opened my private practice, I was full in 2 weeks and people stayed with me for years and years and years. Not because they weren't getting better, but because they found someone that could understand them, that spoke their language. And I graduated lots and lots of people, but there were those who just felt that I could speak to them in a way that no one else got. And it's because I was channeling. It's not just Audrey being like re was really paying attention in grad school. That wasn't what was happening because if you asked me what like therapeutic method I used with people, it was pure intuition. But I would tell people I was a Rogerian therapist, which is unconditional positive regard, which is accurate. I did do that, but I also just channeled when I was with people. And because I haven't been counseling for about a year now, I forget that there's this intersection between these two worlds. But I have been channeling this whole year for people, and so I have been counseling in a different modality, a different structure, a different openness. And that's freaking beautiful. So this channeling session I did for these women, it's so potent, so powerful, so beautiful, so extraordinary. I was floored. They were floored. We were all floored. There was a lot of healing that took place. It was one of those definite, like, I believe that this is a blend between that channeling therapy that I've done and just like healing generations. It was so cool. So, with that in mind, I used to do group channeling sessions like a year or so ago locally, and there were bigger groups. And when I would do them, I would feel quite drained afterwards because I think because I was connecting and detaching so much. But I've gone through a bazillion upgrades since then, and now it's fairly effortless for me. Or it felt that way. And when I left, I was at this event, I was just like so rejuvenated. I felt so good. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to do an Ask Osho podcast this week because that's going to really rejuvenate me and make me feel good too. And it'll answer some questions. I have some folks on TikTok that are so engaging and they ask these brilliant questions. And I really want to honor those questions and answer a few of them today. I have a huge list of questions, but I'm going to answer a few of them today. And then someone on Instagram asked me a question today that I thought was really, really a good question. So I'm going to answer probably about four, maybe five questions. I don't know. Depends on how deep we get. Uh, and ask Osho to. I feel like it'll bring something into some like a concise grouping. Because whenever I'm doing a group of channeling, it feels like even if all of the questions are different, very different. Osho brings them all back to be completely related and a whole event, like when I did my Ask Osho events. I look forward to doing those again. When the time is right and I am called to do so. So my first question, this is so funny because I've been carrying this piece of paper in my wallet so that in case I go like to the river or somewhere and I am like, oh, I could film a question right now. But I don't have it on me. So I have this, it's been through it. This this little piece of wounded paper. So I'm going to, let's see. The first question I haven't answered on here is portals of different kinds, including water ones. I see them all the time with birds coming out or faces of non-human friends of mine showing up. Oh, just portals of different kinds. Okay. Yeah, like different kinds of portals. That's interesting. Okay, let's get comfy. Let's get comfy. Side note, check out how long my hair's getting. from shaving it after my dad died. I still have this silver streak right here, which is super badass. And when I was in Maui, my best friend and I, 'cause she lives there, we went to go get like some groceries before going to the beach, and she saw my hair in the light and she's like, "What is happening?" Because she hadn't seen it this way before. And she's like, "It's so cool." Yes, I think it's cool also. Okay, I'm going to ask about portals of different kinds from Osho. Hey, Osho, could you explain to me about portals and how they show up differently, including in water? Portals are, so he's showing me as above, so below, the law of correspondence, which is how one thing connects to another thing in the human body through pathways. And he's showing me in particular acupuncture right now, that one thing connects to another thing, another thing, another thing. And he's saying the way we see um, roads, how one consciously is like, I need to, gets in their car and they're like, I need to go to the grocery store, I need to go to a doctor's appointment, or I need to go meet a friend. And in your mind, you can picture a map of how you'll get there if you're in a place that you're familiar with. And if not, you use the GPS and then you follow those instructions to get to your destination. Those are roads that are experienced, pathways, 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 he's saying over that you experience in your realm. When realms are opened up out of the 3D and into other dimensions, that widens your field of potential connectivity that you haven't accessed previously. So if you were to take, this is so cool how he explains things. So he's showing me how Google satellite gives you a different perspective of a map that you like you are in your car and driving and it's first person, like a like a first person fighter game or something. But if you're looking at it through a satellite, it's looking at it from above, so it's a whole different perspective of the roadways. He's saying another step outside of that is to see the roadways that exist in, okay, so he's bringing up portals versus vortexes. So a vortex is a PowerPoint of ley line intersections that create a circular energetic pattern that creates a warped perception of paced time from the human perspective because the energy is so amplified, everything within that vortex is affected by said vortex. So if a tree is growing in the vortex, it will be spiraled as the energy spirals through the vortex. If you're standing within the vortex, your body will begin to move in the sway of the vortex. This is different than a portal. Okay, this is great. I really want to know because I'm like, portals, vortexes, what's the difference? A portal is something that, oh, wow. Okay. So a vortex is something that naturally exists on the planet from an intersection of ley lines and power points in the energetic grid of the planet. But portals can be created, he's saying. Like they can exist, there can be a portal in a vortex. He's clarifying. To be clear, that's probably why you're confused about portals and vortexes, because they can intersect, but one is not necessarily dependent on the other. And this comes into our own ability to tap into our infinite potential with hold on, the technology that exists within our physical body. So once we know how to tap into the technology within our physical body, which is it's a balance, it's well, he's saying in essence, it's a clearing of all of the energy centers in your body, which are your chakra systems, which are themselves portals and vortices because they're intersections within our own system because we are planets. He's saying, so these are vortices that exist within us, but the vortices can also be portals. So he's trying to clarify simplistically for our minds. That's not an insult. He's just saying it comes as naturally as it does for you to drive to a destination you've been to a million times. That is as natural as it is for him to speak of the vortices that exist within your chakra systems in your human technology, which those vortices also within hold portals. Once you open all of those vortices to allow for your physical body to have a flowing energetic state that is in balance between the masculine and feminine, and all of the shadow or density has been released, you then can connect to the physical plane of the earth and the energetic plane of the earth, like locking into a mainline computer. And from that point of your own godhood, you are then able to, with simply intention, through the law of mentalism, create a portal in your mind's eye that becomes a physical portal that you can travel through to whatever perceived destination you wish. This is done often through, in higher dimensional beings, through the use of a Merkaba as a um, light vehicle, which is when they are moving the Merkaba, which is a tetrahedron that's both up and down to look like it's basically like a three-dimensional Star of David. Once that is in motion so quickly, it looks like a sphere. That's the spheres that people are seeing in the sky, the orbs or whatever. Those are what people are seeing are beings that are actually transporting themselves through intended portals of their own making. There are also portals that can be created through intentional use of crystal grids, systems, and through astrological events like eclipses, for example, equinoxes, solstices, etc. Those are potent periods of time that hold portal. Oh, that's right. Okay, because I've done events on like the 8-8 portal, 11-11 portal, whatever. And those are called portals because they are naturally intersecting powerful points of contact within our universal structure that allow for a thinning of what separates us one from another. And so you can, with intention, create portals externally from yourself without doing so from a position of being a light body. But it has to be done with great specificity, and there are many ancient occultist books that talk about how those portals can be created um, with the use of planetary alignments, sigils, herbs, corresponding things. But another way that is preferential, he says, uh, so there's high magic and low magic. The low magic is the earthly magic in which you are doing this with elemental powers that exist within the planet. And then the high magic is when you are doing it astrologically and you're connecting to the higher celestial realms within yourself. That's when you're able to create your own portals that can travel interplanetarily. That's a word. But low magic is where you're able to create portals that allow for communication between realms in an earthly and more dense structure. So portals naturally exist within vortices, and portals can also be man-made. The ideal way to do so is to clear your own field and your own technology to become part of the planetary grid seamlessly so you are able to, on autopilot as it is going to the store when listening to music in your car, you can very easily do that interplanetarily, inner Earth, inner Sun, whatever. You can go wherever you wish by mere thought through internal portal. He's saying also be aware that the physical is not all that is real. Much is done and traveled and traversed within the mind's eye that is equally real. And lastly, to address the water, there are universes within the ocean that are not he's saying not unlike, but they are very unlike uh the land that we live on within the ocean, deep, deep into the ocean is like another layer of a planet. And so certainly there are portals and vortices that are experienced within the ocean that can be accessed through the developed mind of a spiritual practitioner through their mind's eye, to be able to observe, transport themselves in ways that are through curiosity, without injuring yourself. You can do that. But other interdimensional beings certainly choose to come through portals in the ocean, largely because there aren't a lot of eyes on them in the ocean, so that travel is much easier. He's saying that that's all he has to say. He's very abrupt, like he's in, he's out. That's really, 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 really interesting. I feel like I know more than I once did. That explains a lot because now I'm thinking about my grid work. I'm thinking about like some of my friends and I, we did change the energetic spin of a vortex on a portal day. And we did so by changing it from a wounded masculine to a divine feminine balancing. Oh, this is just opening up a whole understanding for me that's brand new. I love it. So I hope that answered the question. I think it answered way more than that question, actually. Actually. Okay, next question. All right. Why are certain individuals chosen for protecting observations and chosen for communication, like you and me? Why is someone a chosen one? All right. He's like, you chose. You chose. So this comes down to our understanding of how incarnation works and how the soul is structured to come into this plane of existence. This plane of existence is so dense that we forget our divine nature. And for those of us who have lived long and through many soul incarnations, and many of us are walking masters during this transitional time, it is important to release the idea that everyone that is on this planet is of the same playing field. That is not the case. Not only is this a seeded planet of hybridized beings from many different galactic and star systems, which is a unique imprint for each that is vastly different. But each person incarnated at this time has a different background and experience of incarnation, in multitudes or not. And so there is, age is irrelevant, he's saying. So what it is, it's much like when you're signing up for a college course and you're looking at your catalog, and you feel like you could test out of Math 101 because you're really good at math. So you instead test out and then get a very advanced math course. And you're like, I'm going to ace it. But you get into the class and you realize, oh, wow, that was really much harder than I thought. It sounded better on paper, right? Um, even for those of us that have been masters and had already reached a mastery, a soul mastery prior to this incarnation, and have he showed me um, very much like those like Kuan Yin, who is known for having reached a state of nirvana, and as she was ascending, she heard the cries of the people on earth and said she must return to save all of them, and she would not return to nirvana until she had saved every last crying soul. He's saying that the masters that are walking the plane of this earth now are those that chose to come back to assist in the ascension of others so their suffering would be alleviated. So those are many, for many, that is the case of being a chosen person or being, is that you're incarnated into a physical vessel on this planet and are deemed to be a humanoid. But there are many factors in your energetic body that make you also otherwise. And it is a matter of integrating all of those separate bodies that exist, the etheric and spiritual, emotional, physical bodies, all into one, so that you are able to feel like as a fully integrated and aware person that is able to access all aspects of self that have existed before now. So your mastery becomes an integrated factor into your everyday awareness and work that you feel called to do. So what makes someone chosen is that they are self-chosen to come at this time and return for some, and for others it is to come for the first time. As their mastery and evolution as a soul spark has been polished through other incarnations, not on Earth, but they volunteered to come to this plane of existence with the choice as a massive volunteer opportunity, basically. And it's he's saying that there's a lot of very autistic people that are of that caliber. Um, those that have not incarnated on the earth before have had a harder time acclimating into their physical body and are what one would deem um, a higher need with their neurodivergence. Others have incarnated on Earth before and still struggle being in a physical vessel, but they are more high functioning in their neurodivergence, though that is a term that people don't like. That's what he's saying. Um, but it's the vibration that the individual holds that is what is of assistance and service to humanity, even for those that are, quote, low functioning, the way they impact others with their unconditional love and expression of love through perpetual presence of mind and spirit that can find joy with or without function within the body is a softening for many that are surrounding them. And that is the light work they do. But they are in constant communication with other realms and experience joy in this way. Um, there are many expressions of those that are chosen in this world at this time, and that goes beyond human to also animal. There are many chosen masters that are within the animal kingdom that are our teachers and guardians, and even in the insect kingdom. There are so many masters that are walking among us right now to help raise the frequency of the planet in order that Gaia is able to ascend and do something that has not been done in this way ever before. And so there is no one that is chosen by someone else. Everyone that is here to do this work is self-chosen, is what he is saying. I like that he brought in insects, like I mean, I have a history with manted beings, and I know that there's like these teachings, these Zen teachers that like have a mantis on their hand. And they're just like, or a grasshopper. And they understand that there's that mastery in the teaching that's within these kingdoms. And I just think that's really beautiful. So when I am begrudgingly stating, why did I have to come here? As I'm sure many of you have. It's because it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. I chose and I have no regrets today. Today. Okay. What's next? Why do humans have a hard time believing there are aliens? It seems logical that we aren't the only life in the universe. That's a really cool question. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. I already see the answer, but I can't wait to see what else he brings forth from what I'm already seeing. Okay. Why do people have such a hard time believing you, Osho? Or all alien life? Este perdere vergonha e ironia mas auro negatimil horridiviasot. He's saying it's all conditioning. So, oh, this is getting into the other thing. Okay. He's talking about from the moment a person is born, they are given programming that is to let the child know that what they are saying is to be praised or to be shamed. It's basically like lifting up or crushing with everything. And so that could be like when their first step happens, they're like, everybody's cheering, yay, good job. And so they're like, yay, it's good that I'm walking. And then they start to run and they fall on their face and they're like, oh, but it's the messaging that they get from the moment that they enter the world and is we want to perpetuate that which can be praised and reduce the amount of times that you are feeling shame or guilt. And that is first experienced through our caregivers. They could be parents, grandparents, daycare, anybody that is taking care of you. And so that takes this very exploratory and open mind that is a sponge that hasn't taken anything in yet. It's just like la la la. And it starts forming it and molding it into something that is limiting. And that's done from every single angle. Often within the family of origin, if there's a religious construct, or even like any construct, if it's like highly intellectual, if it's achievement oriented, whatever it is that the parent is projecting onto the child is a way of structuring the child's mind into not thinking outside of boxes. This is the box we think within, and we do not think outside of this box, or you will feel shame, you will feel ridicule, you will be made fun of. And it's not just by parents, it can be from teachers, siblings, friends. It's so even if they're very loving, understanding parents, if there are friends that mock them, that crushes their spirit into feeling shame, regret, sadness, grief over their openness. And they realize it's not safe to feel open. It's not safe to think outside of those boxes. I am more accepted and I feel safer in a world when I just mimic what others show me is acceptable. And that continues on into adulthood where thinking outside of a box is said to be conspiratorial, and those people are mocked as being crazy or mad societally. And when that happens, that's just another added layer to stay in your box, stay in your lane. Do not feel whimsy. Do not feel hope that there is something outside of this place, because if you feel hope, then you will start to question things, and that can't be done. So he's saying so much of this is unintentionally imposed upon a free brain, an open mind of a fresh baby, unintentionally oppressive thoughts that are parroted from parents who had been oppressed from their babyhood on. So it's this perpetuation of an ongoing cycle and unawareness that is basically it exists solely to keep one feeling safe and that they belong, because if they step outside of that box, they will be ridiculed and called mad, um, or they will be judged by their peers and spat out in a way that feels like death. So that's why people don't. I think, and really, that's why, little kids are not before the age of 7 when your whimsy starts to fade. Um, it's easy for you to believe in the Tooth Fairy and Santa and angels, and because there are no limits when you are a child. But all the structures that are here to narrow our viewpoint is really um, to make good workers and employees, and just money makers for corporations, instead of to develop one's unique sense of perspective around the world and their place in it. So, yeah, that's a super bummer. That's a super bummer. Dang. Okay. So, my last question. Can you ask Osho about soul contracts? I think that the idea is sort of inherently flawed because it sort of reiterates giving or signing something so that an exterior force has power or influence in your life. I think they exist in some sense, but not in a sort of contract way, instead, with real autonomy. That's a great question. And I agree already. But yeah, um, last question, Osho. You heard it. Talk to me about soul contracts. Autonomy is never sacrificed, ever. Like in a concept, a soul contract, it is he's like, that's a bad word for it. He really, really, really doesn't like how some words have been misused in media, and also like they've been used in an abusive way, like twin flames or something like that. Like when those terms have been abused and misused and distorted so much, they don't hold the original tonality. It's like a really bad cover song that you're like, "Oh, stop playing it. It's so wrong. No one can be like Fleetwood Mac." Um, so he's saying that that's what soul contract has done. So when you hear the term soul contract, immediately feels you makes you feel imprisoned, is what he's saying. And anything that makes you feel imprisoned is dense and not of the light. So a better term for this would be like an intentional incarnation, is what he keeps saying, an intentional incarnation, which goes back to what I was just talking about of those who came in to kind of as a rescue squad to come in and raise the frequency of Gaia. So that what we would know as a soul contract, instead being an intentional incarnation, the intention is what you're seeing as a contract. So when you come in, like before you were born, when your soul decided to incarnate, what was it doing that for? Well, he's showing me this thing that happened right after my awakening journey. Like my Kundalini rose, and I went into this like wild trance, and I ended up traveling inside of a sun, and it was like a hall of like levitating philosophers that were just a little like a foot off the ground, just kind of moving forward. It looked like Greece, kind of, but it was golden and pearl and marble, and it was beautiful. And there were doors you could go in, and that were just infinite libraries. And when I went there, I was non-physical. I looked kind of like a colored energy. And when I got there, I spoke to an old guy and was like, "What am I here on the planet to do?" And he showed me in this hall, I believe it was an Akashic. He's like, "This is your mission, essentially," and it was to raise the vibration of the planet. And I was kind of bummed. I'm like, "That's it?" But no, really, that was my intention with incarnation, was to raise the frequency of the planet. So when that's the intention, that can look like many things, he's saying. To raise the frequency of the planet, I could do what I do with grid work, or I could counsel people, or I could just be a really friendly guy at a coffee shop that helps people out when they need it. Like raising the frequency of the planet looks like a lot of different things, but that intentional incarnation slash what we know as soul contract is is an over like an umbrella that's over you in your incarnation, and you have the autonomy not only to choose that that was your intention, but you have the autonomy to choose how that looks, because it's all flawless. However you choose to do that is flawless. Even if you go off track and do a lot of really awful things, when you come back to it, you give that much more because, oh no, I did all these awful things. I'm going to do all these great things now. And you just make up for lost time. He's like, you can't do wrong. And some people feel like they, quote, have a soul contract with another person, like there's this person they're tied to and they can't release, which is kind of what he's showing me is what the question was a little bit about too, is how we get tied to these people or feel tied to them. Like it's a karmic contract or a soul contract. Again, the wording is bad. Um, but the intentional incarnation around it at times is to play out another game. Like if you're doing a level in a video game you've done many times before and you're curious if you go into the cave or if you go into the chamber, what's going to happen, kind of like a choose your own adventure. So you come in with curiosity. It's more about like your curiosity to see what will happen if you make a different choice on the level. That's less about a soul contract, as you would put it, and more about wanting to play. And sometimes that play is very uncomfortable, but it needs to be exhausted because you want to play out the every potential of that level of that game. You want to play out every single one to make sure you know you chose the right one. And people will do that as an effort to really just play out potentials. Um, and also there are times he's saying when there's been an agreement of an intentional incarnation among two people before they come in, to be like, hey, you're going to come in with this ancestral predisposition for victimhood. How can I help you clear that better in your life so that you can get onto your soul mission? And they'll be like, hey, it'd be really helpful if you were like making me feel codependent to such a degree with your narcissism that I end up breaking down. And I finally speak up for myself. And they're like, okay, cool. I'll do my best to be a huge narcissist. And so that ends up happening and it polishes your character and it's miserable, but that was like maybe what you're referring to as a soul contract, but instead it was an intentional incarnation with collaboration, he's saying. intentional incarnation with collaboration. That's awesome. I've got a lot of those. So it's all with the matter of he's like everything that is a hindrance or a challenge on this side, you have the autonomy to change. You have the autonomy to change your collaboration at any time. You can give up your collaboration and be like, this was too hard. I don't know why I agreed to this. Get out of my life. And you can do that. You always have the freedom to do that. Again, he's saying just like a video game, you can just turn off the video game and not play anymore. Like you don't have to finish that level. You can just be done playing that game. Um, but it's always your choice. Even the really, really shitty stuff that people get upset about, um, there's always a choice to get out of that situation. Once you feel you've learned enough, and you will never leave until you feel you've learned enough from that person. But he's like, please don't use the word soul contracts anymore. Look at it as intentional incarnation. And even changing the way you talk about it is going to change the tonality around what you used to see as a contract and will allow you more freedom and less imprisonment in the tone, in the vibration of your speaking about the situation you're in. Instead, really address what your intention is and understand that much like the story that was given about the intentional incarnation to raise the vibration of the planet, that can look like many things. It doesn't have to be the thing you feel you are, quote, trapped in. If you feel trapped in a certain thing, that is not an intentional incarnation, but a self-perceived trap that you have found yourself in that you can always pivot from. That's freaking cool. I want to write that down. Intentional incarnation with collaboration. Because for real, there are some people I know I've had, quote, soul contracts with, but they have been really, really viscerally awful. Like they've been freaking awful. And I'm like, what is this happening to me? Well, Audrey, you can pivot at any time. Nothing happens to you without your consent. Speaking as a survivor of all the things that are bad, I can say that those experiences that were violence against me when I was younger or whatever did serve a huge purpose in me, in my what I would refer to as like my mission, which I think is probably a little bit different than the intentional incarnation. Yeah, I want to know about that. I know I said I was gonna be done. Um, okay, so the mission is within the intention. So it's how it's broken up. So you can have like 50 missions within the contract or intentional incarnation of raise the vibration of the planet, and each mission is a piece of that puzzle. And they eventually all fit together into what that whole mission or intention is, or intention. The mission are the pieces. The intention is the whole puzzle. Thank you, Osho. Now we know so many things we didn't know before. I certainly do. And I feel a little cross-eyed, actually. With that, I would say I hope that that was of use to you and interesting. And how did those all come together? Well, it feels like they all came together about it all comes back to our sovereignty, our personal power, even with the portals and the vortices, is to clear our own channel so that we're able to access our own portals and vortices that allow us to do so interplanetarily on the astral. And to recognize that what we see as things like that, we're witnessing that Merkaba flight of the light body in the sky with our physical eyeballs. And that's really cool. That's really cool. I am, I feel a little just like stoned right now, quite frankly, because when I channel like intensive stuff that long, and my eyes sometimes are going like this when my eyes are closed and I'm channeling, so they're a little tired, but I feel smarter. Honestly, I feel like I know things now that I didn't know before, which is exciting. Um, a friendly reminder that I am happy to channel Osho for you if you wanted to schedule a channeling session with me and answer all your questions. I also did a lot of mediumship at my group thing this week, and I don't typically do that, but I was like fully doing mediumship with dead relatives. It was so freaking cool because that's not my go-to. I usually am at the vibration of a higher being, but I was definitely chatting with some ancestors. It was neat to give some very specific directions, honestly. So I can do like group or individual channeling sessions virtually, or if you live in Boise, I can certainly do that in person too. Um, yeah, and I'm also doing my Kundalini activations as well. I've been on vacation. My calendar's fairly open, so hit me, guys. Hit me. Hit me with your best shot. That was awful. My throat after talking for an hour. My singing voice is not good anyway, mind you, but it's worse now. Thanks for listening today. And next week, we'll piggyback on what I got today about the mission. That's going to be cool because I'm going to bring in the soul mission, how you know you've started one, how you know you've completed one, and what comes next. Now I understand it's with the intentional incarnation, that there's going to be another mission. Yay! Can't wait to find out what that is. See, it all works out. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me today for this Ask Osho event. If these messages resonated for you, please share with others you feel it would benefit, and I look forward to chatting with you next time.